Hi guys, welcome back to the academy. I know you all have been waiting for the second part of the subsartorial blocks, but sorry guys, due to the COVID-19 and issue, we are not having much of an elective cases. I did not get enough video content for that video. So till then I thought I'll engage you guys with something else. So from the thumbnail you would have guessed about the video. Yes, it is about dexamethasone. We all know about its antiemetic properties, its anti-inflammatory properties. We anesthesiologists even use it as a perineural adjunct. Actually, if you see the Nicora website, in their article on the perineural adjuncts, you can see that dexamethasone is considered one of the best perineural adjuncts available for now. This video is not about any of this use of dexamethasone. We are going to discuss about the intravenous use of dexamethasone as a part of multimodal analgesia. So I started using dexamethasone intravenously after seeing the prospect guidelines. The prospect is actually ESRAS, that is European Society of Regional Anesthesia's procedure-specific pain management guidelines. So they have come in 2002 and they have given guidelines for about 20 most commonly performed surgeries. It includes our lower segment cesarean section, inguinal hernia repairs, breast surgeries, hip surgeries, knee replacement, etc. So for most of the surgeries in the prospect guidelines, dexamethasone is included as a part of multimodal analgesia given in the preoperative or intraoperative period. For cesarean section, for hip surgeries, for lap cholecystectomy and surgeries like that, they have included it based on grade A evidence available, and for surgeries like inguinal hernia, breast surgeries and all, they have included it based on grade B evidence. So at least they have grade B evidence for giving dexamethasone. There are few surgeries in the prospect guidelines which they have not included dexamethasone due to limited or lack of evidence. That is because most of the guidelines were formed before 2010. They were having lack of evidence. This includes most commonly performed total knee replacement surgery as well. So maybe in near future they will update their guidelines and they may include dexamethasone in those surgeries as well. I will give the link to the Prospect's website in the description. You can go there and check, or else you can simply Google Prospect space ESRA and you will be able to go to that website. So after seeing this guideline, I started using it, and for the last 1.5 years I have been using it as a part of routine care for multimodal analgesia for procedures under general anesthesia, regional anesthesia including spinal anesthesia. So I was pretty happy with how it turned out to be with respect to its analgesic property and enhanced recovery effects. But in the recent past, I came across an article. This article was published in 2013. It was published in ACB's Anesthesia Journal. First reading itself, I was concerned with what I was practicing. So I actually stopped using intravenous dexamethasone for multimodal analgesia, and I went in search for literature evidence. Then I cleared my doubts. Then I thought I must share the details with you that we'll see in this video. My name is Dr. Arun and welcome to my academy. So if you look at that article, the article mainly deals with the intravenous use of dexamethasone for postoperative nausea vomiting prophylaxis. So as long as the dose we use for PONV prophylaxis and analgesia are the same, the concerns are same. This article deals with 3 broad categories of effects following intravenous dexamethasone. To be precise, side effects. This includes surgical complications, immediate postoperative complications and chronic or long-term complications. Chronic or long-term complications are seen only after chronic use of dexamethasone, so that we are not going to discuss. We are discussing only the surgical and the immediate postoperative complications following single dose of dexamethasone. So perioperative hyperglycemia, wound infections and delayed wound healing are the 3 major surgical complications in relation to dexamethasone dosage. Let's take a closer look at each issue. Single dose of intravenous dexamethasone are known to cause elevation in blood sugar levels regardless of whether the patient is diabetic or not. So a low to intermediate dose of dexamethasone can lead to an increase of around 18 to 25 mg per deciliter in blood sugar levels 24 hours post administration. So basically we have to know what is this low dose, intermediate dose and high dose. All that is less than 0.1 mg per kilogram is considered as a low dose. 0.1 to 0.2 mg per kilogram is considered as an intermediate dose, and all that is more than 0.2 mg per kilogram is considered as a high dose. The dose which we use for PONV prophylaxis and analgesia is something low to intermediate dose, and this dose can lead to increase in blood sugar levels 24 hours post administration. But this elevation is detrimental only in patients who are having already elevated blood sugar levels. So for patients who are having glucose intolerance, it may be prudent to avoid this dexamethasone. Secondly, there is an increased risk of infection. How is this impact explained? It can be due to either blunting of your febrile response, or you can have an alteration in the innate or acquired immunity, or you can have increased risk of opportunistic, atypical or fungal infections due to these two effects. The third risk in this category is delayed wound healing, which is indirectly related to wound infections and directly related to the effect on collagen, fibrinogen and epithelial function. This effect has an indirect impact on an issue which is a concern for us anesthesiologists per se, that we will discuss in a short while. These are significant concern for anesthesiologists because most of the time we have to convince our surgeons on the effect of these medications. So let's look at the literature on the above said effects. There are 4 major trials related to the clinical impacts of the effects of dexamethasone mentioned above. This includes the DEX trial, Enigma 2 trial, the DREAMS trial and the PADDY trial, in the order of which they have published the results. So if you see DEX trial, it is dexamethasone in cardiac surgery. This is not directly related to our topic because they had used very high dose of dexamethasone, to be precise 1 mg per kilogram, to assess its anti-inflammatory effects. The primary endpoint of the study was to assess major adverse events like myocardial infarction, stroke, renal failure and respiratory failure, and they had secondary assessment points like risk of infection, mechanical ventilation need and length of stay in hospital and ICU. The DEX trial concluded that high dose of dexamethasone reduced the risk of infection, reduced the mechanical ventilation need and the length of hospital and ICU stay, which was also statistically significant. All other trials are for non-cardiac surgery, so it is important to note this one. So for those who are interested in cardiac care, there is another trial known as CIRS trial. It is nothing but steroids in cardiac surgery, but the primary end results of the study was contrary to the DEX trial. They found an increase in the adverse outcomes following methylprednisolone use. Maybe that's why there is an ongoing DEX2 trial. You have to wait for the result of the trial to get published so that you can use dexamethasone for cardiac surgeries. Coming to the Enigma 2 trial, this trial focused on the effects of nitrous oxide in general anesthesia. So there was a secondary post-hoc analysis for this trial which assessed the effect of dexamethasone as well, and they found there was no increase in the risk of perioperative infections or other major adverse events with dexamethasone. And the results of the study were same in diabetics and non-diabetics. Neither of these trials were directly related to dexamethasone nor its commonly used dose. Maybe that's why people were still having difficulty with routine use of dexamethasone for multimodal analgesia. Then there was the DREAMS trial. They evaluated the efficacy of dexamethasone for postoperative nausea vomiting, thereby reinforcing the already known facts. Yes, they found that the drug is excellent for that. On top of that, they found that single dose dexamethasone did not increase the risk of infections like wound infections, urinary infections or respiratory infections. There were no new onset diabetes in any of the patients. The global recovery scores were high in those patients. However, it should be noted that they did not include high risk patients in the study, that is those who are having high elevated blood sugar levels. Still unhappy? Let's look at the results of the PADDY trial. This is the latest trial. The results were published in May 2021. So they actually conducted a webinar to publish their results. It's available on YouTube. So it is a 1 hour video, but in 30 minutes they have included the results and discussion of the trial. So if you see the trial, this trial started as a non-inferiority trial. A non-inferiority trial means they have started the trial assuming that dexamethasone will not lead to an increase in the risk of infection of more than 2%. So non-inferiority means giving dexamethasone is as safe as not giving it. That's what we want, right? They gave 8 mg dexamethasone to assess the risk of surgical site infections, superficial, deep and organ space infections. So if you see here, this is an inferiority trial. There is an increased risk of infection. This is a non-inferiority trial, that is neither an increased risk nor there is a reduction. If you see the results of a PADDY trial, it actually turned out to be a superior trial, that dexamethasone in their study was found to reduce the risk of infections. But they have not mentioned it in their results, but they found that dexamethasone was found to increase the risk of chronic post-surgical pain. There was only a very low incident, but that was a statistically significant increase in the risk of CPSPs. So they are planning on a study on dexamethasone and CPSP because they could not explain on how that had happened. Then should we be using dexamethasone? So for the literature available as of now, there is no evidence of increased risk of CPSP due to dexamethasone other than this trial. So we have to wait for the results of any other trial which is going to happen. So we are yet to decide on that. Definitely, in the present scenario, there will be a concern of increased risk of mucormycosis with dexamethasone. For the literature available till now, there is no increased risk of opportunistic infections or atypical infections or fungal infections due to single dose of intravenous dexamethasone. So definitely single dose of dexamethasone will not lead to mucormycosis. So our three major problems, perioperative hyperglycemia, wound infections and delayed wound healing, solved. So anyways, we got surgeons on board. What about us? There are few specific issues which are specific concern for anesthesiologists. So if you see them, there are 5 major concerns with use of intravenous dexamethasone. First thing is perineal itching, then neuropsychiatric effect, third increased risk of PDPH, risk of tumor lysis syndrome and alteration in the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. So if you see the first problem, perineal itching, it is actually due to the phosphate preservative in the dexamethasone. It is definitely a concern when you are going to give in patients who are awake or in patients who are under regional anesthesia other than spinal anesthesia. But it has been found out that if you dilute the drug and if you are able to give the drug very slowly, you can avoid the perineal itching. Or else you have to give it after induction of general anesthesia. But if you give after induction of general anesthesia, the purpose of dexamethasone for multimodal analgesia may not be as effective as giving it preoperatively. So basically you can dilute the drug and give it very slowly. So the first problem solved. Next major concern for anesthesiologist is neuropsychiatric effects. It includes cognitive dysfunction after surgery. So it is seen mostly after long-term use, and it can vary from mild irritation or anxiety to severe maniac or psychotic episodes. But you should know that there are few case reports on patients who had psychotic behavior including suicidal tendencies following single intravenous use of dexamethasone. There are no randomized controlled trials or case series on this effect, but there are few case reports. And all the previous trials which I mentioned, they had not faced such problems due to dexamethasone. This study on the effect of dexamethasone in patients undergoing cardiac surgeries, they found that dexamethasone was actually protective against development of postoperative delirium. There is a meta-analysis available on the effect of dexamethasone on postoperative cognitive dysfunction and delirium. They have not found it to be protective against POCD, nor it was found to be harmful. Therefore, generally speaking, even though it is not protective, it is not harmful either. So if you rank the neuro effects of dexamethasone, the first effect is what which is seen most commonly after giving intravenous dexamethasone. Patients have a sense of well-being, they have improved concentrations, they have mild euphoria, they have less fatigue, and they often say they have never felt better before. Maybe use of dexamethasone can be justified with this. Then the biggest concern for us anesthesiologists, the risk of PDPH. As a matter of fact, this was one risk which was actually I was unaware of. So this article actually mentioned there is an increase in the risk of PDPH following dexamethasone. This was based on an article which was published earlier, which they did studies on patients undergoing cesarean section and found that there is an increased risk of PDPH. What is interesting in this survey is that they even found that dexamethasone was not effective in preventing postoperative nausea vomiting. Interesting, right? Then I searched for if there is any another literature available for the same. There was this Cochrane review which was published in 2013. They actually assessed the effect of different drugs in effect on severity and prevention of PDPH. Dexamethasone was one of the drugs which they assessed, and in Cochrane review also they had taken only one article into consideration. That was the article which we discussed earlier. So based on that, the Cochrane review also concluded that dexamethasone will lead to increased risk of PDPH. But again, there are studies which showed that dexamethasone is not protective against PDPH, but they may reduce the severity of the PDPH. This article actually showed some benefit following dexamethasone use with respect to PDPH. Confusing, right? So studies until 2020, they did not find any advantage of giving dexamethasone, but they found more harm. But in 2021, there was this article which got published. It was actually a meta-analysis which included 12 randomized controlled trials, including around 1500 patients undergoing cesarean section. This meta-analysis actually included the studies which we discussed earlier as well. They did not notice any benefit with the use of dexamethasone, nor they found any harm. So can we use dexamethasone for the purpose of analgesia? Yes, definitely we can use. What about tumor lysis syndrome? There are few case reports on dexamethasone causing acute tumor lysis syndrome. Tumor lysis syndrome is the biochemical effects due to tumor cell breakdown following chemotherapy, radiotherapy or surgical manipulations. Dexamethasone is often used as a chemotherapeutic agent and such high dose can lead to acute tumor lysis syndrome. But there are no randomized controlled trials, or all the previous trials which we discussed, they never mentioned any issue with relation to dexamethasone and tumor lysis syndrome. Definitely there is an increased risk in patients who have got leukemias or lymphomas, and there are few case reports in which single dose of intravenous dexamethasone led to tumor lysis syndrome because there was an underlying hidden lymphomas or leukemias which was actually undiagnosed, and such tumor lysis syndromes has led to mortality in the perioperative period. So for such high risk patients like those who have leukemias or lymphomas, it is better to avoid intravenous dexamethasone. Speaking about cancer, whether the dexamethasone will lead to increased cancer recurrence? Definitely no. There are studies in patients who underwent breast cancer surgeries and ovarian malignancy surgeries in which they have given intravenous dexamethasone as a part of multimodal analgesia or for PONV prophylaxis, and they have found that single dose intravenous dexamethasone will not lead to an increase in the risk of cancer recurrence. And also in these studies, they did not find any incidence of tumor lysis syndrome. Next and the last issue with respect to this is hypothalamo-pituitary axis suppression. Single dose of dexamethasone given intravenously definitely will lead to HPA axis suppression starting 24 hours post administration, and it can last up to 1 week. This effect is actually very minimal and its clinical significance is actually unknown. The literature on the effects of chronic steroid therapy on hypothalamo-pituitary axis is available. There are no literature available on the effects of single dose of intravenous dexamethasone on hypothalamo-pituitary axis suppression. What about the commonly said risk of gastric ulceration and musculoskeletal problems following dexamethasone? These are seen only following the chronic long-term use of dexamethasone, and they have not much concern for us as long as we are giving single intravenous dose of dexamethasone. So will you use dexamethasone for multimodal analgesia? I will tell my opinion. My verdict is that dexamethasone can be given for multimodal analgesia and enhanced recovery as a routine care. So for those patients who have got high risk, that is patients who have got already elevated blood sugar levels, patients who have got glucose intolerance, it may be prudent to avoid dexamethasone intravenous use. Even the PROSPECT guideline says to take caution for those who have got glucose intolerance. Another high risk patients are those who have got pre-existing infections and those who have got leukemias or lymphomas because of the risk of tumor lysis syndromes. This is my verdict. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. I hope it was useful for you and for your clinical practice. If you also feel so, just share it among your friends. Until we see next time, thank you.